Chapter 29. The Return of the Queen. The forces who were to attack Linziso waited in the sewers for their time. The aristocrats, save for Queen Silenda and the Jarisse, all went to the party with weapons either hidden in their clothes, an art that the Soledi took great pride in, or somewhere else in Linziso for them to grab once the battle started. Befall, Elinsco, Lonxu, Agri, Fieso, and Villa disguised themselves as servants. The first three waited to intercept Garendo, and the latter three Exalaro. Gregicica carried the poisons. Queen Silenda, Prince Gero, and Jarisse were with Iso and Simpa, Ezo and Farelia, their children, and Cara and her children at Simpa's friend's house. The Jarisse was there to make sure the prince did not leave. The boy had snuck out to be part of the excitement, but then they realized he was there, and he was punished in a most cruel way, being forced to spend time with his sister. It was an equally cruel punishment for Queen Silenda. The party, much like the one to celebrate Garento's return, was very lively. With a Jarisse overseeing it, that was not much of a surprise. Jarissan dances often used bright flutes and fiddles, were very rhythmic, and involved mostly footwork. Lots of hopping, lots of kicking. The only thing hands did was clasp someone else's, or, if the dancer was a woman, move her full skirt. It was said that half of a Jarissan woman's dancing was moving her skirt. They were very far removed from the slow, elegant dances the rest of the nobility preferred, but that was the Jarisse. They did not land close to the Riskan principle that someone expected to rule a country should clean his own room. They landed on it. Some said they made the Riskans look like tyrants. When every 2 minutes the Eladins or tyrants were raiding or trying to raid into your province, you had to be tough. There was no time to care about which fork went on which side of the plate. Menyosinho followed Lord Gageloso like a shadow, staring at the floor. Lord Irio was there, too, unwillingly. Exalaro was wearing her usual mask and cloak, but was also wearing a fine red dress, her discomfort in the fancy clothes evident, and announcing her low birth even before she spoke. Garendo sang and danced. Many soldiers were there, carrying swords and dressed in either their house colors or their country's orange and white, as were Soledi, dressed in the same mask, cloak, and fine red clothes as her, and some of the Rossene. Once most were suitably drunk, Jarissa began her work. She poisoned Lord Gageloso first. She slipped Menyosinho a bottle of it while he was going to refill the Lord Rosena's cup, and while she liked that he looked happier, she wished it was not because he was going to kill someone. Even so, she slipped him a knife as well. Exalaro was very drunk. Jarissa did not think she would have noticed what she was doing even if she had been looking right at her, which she was not. Even if she did notice, Jarissa doubted she would realize that was bad. Finally came Garendo, who spent most of the time dancing and not looking at his food, but when he did return, he drank a lot. Jarissa poured her poison in his cup, then went to dance. She remembered vaguely how he had reacted when he saw her before she was freed. He had actually sounded angry, then apologetic when he spoke to her. She felt almost bad about killing him. Lord Gageloso went first, collapsing suddenly. Menyosinho got an almost bad glint in his eyes, taking the knife Jarissa had given him and stabbing the Michka with using the same frantic energy with which he would stomp on a terrifyingly large bug. Of course, the Rosseni immediately tried to jump on him and kill him, but before that could happen, Lord Irio grabbed him and ran off. Menyosinho panicked and screamed until Lord Irio hissed, "Stop struggling, boy. I am trying to help you." Menyosinho stopped and looked up. His eyes were wide. "I would much rather you have let me kill him, of course, both because I am his brother and you are, 10? I cannot tell with you elves. Anyway, at least he is dead," the Michka continued. Lord Irio and Menyosinho managed to get out of Linziso, and then ran into some Jarisse and Soledi there, specifically to catch escaping enemies or fleeing bystanders, and several spears, knives, and swords. "Do not kill me!" Lord Irio said quickly, holding up Menyosinho. "I am only trying to help this boy. Do not kill me!" "Really?" said the Jarisse. "Aren't you the Lord Rosena's brother?" He nodded, wincing and setting the boy down. "I know how this looks, but I promise I'm not here for any attack. I'm only trying to help this boy." She considered this, then lowered her spear and crouched to be at eye level with Menyosinho. "Is he telling the truth, lad?" she asked. Menyosinho nodded. "Really? He can't hurt you, lad. You can tell us the truth." Menyosinho shook his head. "He helped me. he said in a small voice. The Jarissa thought for a moment. All right, put them with Kraros, but they want the Rosa no chained up. Lord Irio nodded. That is fair. He was chained up without resistance, and he and Menosino were led to Simpa's friend's house. Veron found it easy to sympathize with Menosino and tried to comfort him. Varela, Ezo, and even Cara did as well. They fed him and got him talking more by the end of the night. After Lord Gageloso was poisoned and stabbed, Exalaro and Garendo realized that they had probably also been poisoned. Well, it took Exalaro a bit to put it together, but after that she felt significantly less drunk. Exalaro ran to her room, her stomach turning. She opened the door and tore off her mask just in time to vomit into a bowl. Once she finished, she straightened, shaking, her breath short and shallow. With her mask gone, she did not look very threatening. She was just a girl. Her light brown skin pale and glistening with sweat, her gray eyes wide. Her white blonde hair was visible. Exalaro looked up and gasped. She smiled, trying to regain her usual confidence. Vila! I've been looking everywhere for you, she said. She chuckled. And did you really marry the monk's boy? After all those times you said you weren't in love? Vila nodded. Turns out you can be right about some things. Exalaro looked at Vila's companion. And Fieso, still as handsome as ever, I see. Did you finally realize you made the wrong choice? You haven't no right to call me that, Kesha, Fieso said. Not the one who made the wrong choice. That was you. Even if she had not, he would have chosen Kara. Don't you remember? Said Exalaro. It's Exalaro now. But of course you can call me Exalaro, or Exalaro if you want. Just because I spot on the town of tyrants once, don't mean I'm gonna treat my wife like something to collect, he said. Anyway, this ain't why we're here, and I think you know that. Exalaro laughed. You say you treat your wife well, and you're here to kill me? Maybe I dodged an arrow. Fieso's jaw tightened. You ain't my wife. You'll not never be my wife. Even if you hadn't run off, I wouldn't have chosen you. Anyway, Jaricica's the one who told me to kill you. Exalaro nodded. What honorable behavior. She looked at Agri. Oh, I don't know who you are. Agri's jaw tightened. Well, you know my wife. A spy. You caught her. And then you cut off her hair. His voice almost lowered to a growl. Exalaro paused. All right. Gregicica. She was quite fun. Fieso had to hold Agri back to keep him from strangling her. Wait your turn, boy, he said. Agri sighed. They all took Exalaro and dragged her outside. She was too weak to stop them. Before they had gotten in, they had left Nick, King Ridero's old horse, by a tree. Queen Silenda had said this was what the king would have wanted them to do. Once they reached the horse, Fieso unfastened him from the tree and mounted him, while Vila and Agri put Exalaro down and took out their knives. Nick was not the kind of horse Fieso was used to riding, but he would not have to ride far. Vila crouched by Exalaro. Exalaro tried to stop her, but she was fighting to stay upright. Vila stabbed her in the stomach. Exalaro gasped, her eyes going wide. She leaned more heavily to one side, while Vila stood. For Ferrand, my brother, and brother Dorian, whom you killed. For Luz Micho, my husband, whom you tormented. For Elinsco, whom you tortured. And for the Sorode you helped to enslave, she said. Exalaro laughed. Blood soaked her dress. Weaklings and traitors, all of them. Says the woman dying on the ground, Vila said. Agri crouched next and buried his knife in her stomach as well. For my wife, Jarissa, whom you tortured, whose dignity you spit on, he said, barely keeping his fury contained. Exalaro smiled. Surprised the girl found a husband, looking the way she did. Agri grabbed her hand, laid it flat on the ground, and slammed the handle of his knife into it. Exalaro screamed. Vila wrestled him away from her. You're not the only one who wants to kill her, Agri. Agri was too busy spitting very colorful phrases at Exalaro to pay attention to her, but Vila did manage to drag him away. Fieso looked down at Exalaro from the king's legendary horse. For brother Agriado, brother Bornero, brother Josebo, brother Evazebo, brother Ishunfo, brother Caresho, brother Biedo, brother Jonfao, and brother Dieko. Non-men who spent 20 years raising a boy out in no one else. Men you tormented, whose son you tormented and then stole. For Jarissa, my wife, your sister, whom you almost let die, whose husband, a man you still claim to love, you almost let become widowed, whose children you almost let become motherless, he said, his voice ringing out strong in the night. And with that, he ran over him with Nick, as King Ridero had always wanted to do Garendo and the King of Tonatera, and probably would have wanted to do to Exalaro if he had heard about what she had done to Vericica. This event would see a verse added to the song about King Ridero and Nick. Exalara's body was more broken than Vericica's hand had been. Her breathing was ragged and labored, becoming slower and shallower with each one, until it finally ceased completely. Fieso sighed. I wish it didn't have to be this way, Gesha. He looked at Vila and Agri, the former standing solemnly and the latter having finally stopped spitting curses. She used to be a sweet girl, but the way the villagers treated her, and especially after her parents died, he blinked. It changed her. Jarissa and Jarissa too, but not in the same way. He sighed again. Is this how Baron feels? Watching his beloved children betray him, knowing that justice must be served. Vila shook her head. I don't know. Agri stopped, remembering he was dealing with a girl, not a demon. You knew her? Fieso nodded. She's my wife's sister, remember? I know it seems odd to believe, but she used to be a good girl. He looked back at Exalaro. I guess she's finally getting what she deserves. Vila nodded. Fieso kept looking at Exalaro. Vila looked up. We should go. The Jarisse might need our support. Fieso nodded and they left. Finally, Garendo stumbled into Miradelo's room and began searching for an antidote. The poison could not kill him, but it would make things very unpleasant. Elinsco looked up and frowned, thinking that when Miradelo found this, he would be very angry that someone had been messing around with his things. Good evening, said Elinsco. He was standing by the wall, previously shrouded in shadows by his wife. She was holding a ring in one hand and a wand in the other. Elinsco held a zanyelosa in his right hand. Lonxo was standing with them, holding his own sword. Garendo stopped for a moment, smiling. Ah, Archbishop Micharello, come back to haunt me. Is your taste in music really so terrible that you would return to torment me? Elinsco almost laughed. Elinsco stopped. What? No, it's Elinsco! He wanted to shout it, but his voice did not rise from its usual low volume. Anger sparked inside him. Don't you remember the name of the boy whose hand you cut off? So that is what happened, Elinsco thought. Garendo nodded. Ah, yes, the midget. Elinsco made an angry Elinsco noise. Elinsco sighed. Garendo laughed, though it ended in a cough. Of course I remember you, lad. I suppose you think to kill me. Don't you know what I did to old Zelenta? Elinsco was confused. Elinsco nodded. I do, which is why I ain't gonna stab you or nothing. Again, Garendo laughed, ending it in a cough. Don't you know, lad, your sword's the only thing I can be killed with. Aside from Zanyelosa, the Arexacico could be killed by natural causes, such as sickness or natural disaster, or by himself. So how do you plan to kill me? Garendo asked. First, you have something that don't belong to you, Elinsco said. He sheathed his sword and went up to Garendo, who at that point was barely able to stand and struggling to keep his food down, a sight that Elinsco was struggling not to gag at, and put a hand on his back. He was not entirely sure what he was supposed to do, but he tried anyway. He felt the presence of the Exalaro Rojo and the Exalaro Gregio, the former like a hot coal, the latter a cooler presence. Fairly certain that taking the Exalaro Rojo would do little to stop Sio's antics, he only reached for the other. When he took his hand away, the Exalaro Gregio was floating above it. Garendo, meanwhile, was trying very hard to keep his food down. Elinsco nodded to Thefia, but Garendo managed to turn around. Wait. They blinked. Elinsco took out a zanyelosa again. What? Don't put me in the ring again. Please, you can punish me however you want. I deserve whatever is decided for me. Just don't tear my soul from my body. Garendo said. Elinsco looked at Thefia and Lonceau. What do you think? It might be a trap, Thefia said. I know, Elinsco said. The poison should stop him from doing much for a while. Let's let the doctor deal with it, and then put him in the dungeon, and let the queen decide what to do with him, Lonceau said. Elinsco and Thefia considered it, then nodded. All right, Elinsco said. Garendo shook his head, pale from dread rather than the poison. No, not the dungeon. Elinsco sighed. Maybe we can figure something else out. While you do that, can you let me out of here? Elinsco asked. He had been stuck in that cage for months, and almost never let out. He felt he would go mad from how small it was, and was sure that after this, even a narrow hallway would make him uncomfortable. Lonceau nodded. Sure, Elins. Elinsco looked up, then realized he was not being addressed. Elinsco sighed. Please, Lord Elinsco, just give us a bit, and like we have the key, Lonceau said. Anyway, it's probably about to get a little exciting around here. Elinsco groaned, slumping against the back of his cage. That, of course, made it rock and made him feel sick. Are you not a Soleda Theophonsia? Can you pick the lock? He asked. Thefia frowned. Half Soledo. I don't have much with me, but maybe... She took a couple pins from her wimple. Her pins were not literally lockpicks disguised as pins, but they would do. Veron had taught her how to pick locks with a long list of things. She managed to pick the locks to his cage and then to his chains and help him down, though he had barely stood or walked in months, so she had to support him. Elinsco stretched, marveling at the floor not moving under him. Oh, finally, he said. Sweet, solid ground! He opened his hands and two small flames appeared above them. He grinned. I can use magic again! Garendo smiled a little, glad his captivity had not given him any scars, at least. Elinsco looked up. I would try to help with the excitement, but the last time I tried I ended up in there. Is there anywhere I could go to avoid it? Thefia nodded. Outside. We have some people waiting to catch people fleeing. They'll be able to take you to a safe place. The Queen and Prince are there, as well as Caja and a few others. Can you walk? Elinsco wanted to roll his eyes and say, well, of course, but knew he probably could not, at least not quickly. He wrestled with his pride for a moment, then finally sighed and bitterly said, No. I'll go, Lonceau said. I'm the biggest. Elinsco groaned at the reminder of his height. That was one part of being in that bird cage that he missed, getting to look down to talk to people. Except Elinsco. He was slightly shorter. Lonceau chuckled. Let's go. He got Elinsco to the group trying to catch fleeing enemies, who led him to where Simpa's very confused friend lived, where Elinsco and Thefia chained Garendo, who felt very uncomfortable about that, but knew that arguing would be pushing his luck, and then took him to the doctor. She treated the poisoning. The Jarisse and their allies started storming Linziso practically the moment Exalaro and Garendo left. Many of the soldiers had joined them. They had mostly either done it to keep themselves or their families safe, or because they wanted to win. Some had even done it so that when the Queen Silenda returned, they would not be imprisoned or dead, and could more easily help her. Seeing that their queen had returned, they decided to fight with her. The Rosene and Exalaro Soledi, while not completely disorganized despite the deaths of their leaders, and certainly knowing something was happening, still had not had the time to prepare and did not know who could be trusted. Also, most of them were drunk. It took most of the night, but they were driven out. Anyone who had been imprisoned for supporting the queen was freed. Ridero had been in his room, since parties were loud and loud noises made him fidgety. Usually when he went to a party, he ended up in some dark corner while his wife stood guard or tried to calm him down. Once he realized there was a fight going on, he took his wife and children and fled. The queen and the prince were told and went to the party, though loud noises also made them fidgety, so they ended up escaping to the library after a while. Once the battle was won, the party did resume. Now not only a celebration of the return to life of Exalaro Gregio and his victory over death, but also the return of a different monarch, Queen Silenda the 15th, and her victory over the Jarissa King. The next few days saw much excitement as the kingdom prepared to receive their new queen, and Queen Silenda prepared to be officially crowned. Now, of course, just killing Lord Gageloso and Exalaro and Garendo giving up was not the end of this. Many of the soldiers were still out cleaning things up, and there was the question of what to do with Garendo. As far as the public knew, he was dead, but since he was not, something had to be done with him. Queen Silenda did not want to kill him, and he had argued that technically he had already died twice, so there was no need to kill him again. Elinsco and Vila were somewhat tempted to suggest cutting off one or both of his hands. Exile, Queen Silenda said finally. How about exile? As long as it's not Tonatera or Aleda, Garendo said. Of course not, Lady Evadelia said. We're not. You. Garendo's expression darkened. I know you don't think highly of me. Lady Evadelia snorted. That's one way to say it, but I would never send someone there. So you have standards. Doesn't change the fact that you deserve much worse than this, Lady Evadelia said. And because I do, there will never again be a man ruling the Jarisse? Garendo asked. Lady Evadelia stopped. Just because you don't let men inherit instead of not letting women inherit like the North does, doesn't make it all right, Garendo said. She sighed, not willing to tell him he had a point. Perhaps it was time that changed. Anyway, Queen Silenda said, here is my proposition. You swear loyalty to me, and swear to never try to seize power again. Then you can go to some town and perhaps be a church organist, though you may want to fix your theology first. Garendo considered it. I know all too well how a monarch can abuse his power, he said. You just lived through it. I do not want to find myself supporting a tyrant. Queen Silenda nodded. That is fair. L'Oncle tells me things were quite bad in your day. But remind me what my mother said before you killed her. That King Lucian might not have been a good king, but there was a better way to solve that problem, Garendo said. All right, then swear that. Should I, or my successors, fail in our duties, you will not resort to violence except as a last resort, and no matter what, you will not seize power, Queen Silenda said. Garendo nodded. I can accept that. Queen Silenda looked to the Lady Jarissa. Lady Evadelia? She nodded. It is acceptable, and I will restore the Deri to the line of succession. Then it seems we're in agreement, Garendo said. So he swore that promise. In blood, of course. Simpa and Cara even returned to help Queen Silenda prepare for her coronation, though Lady Quinia did some of the work as well. Fine clothes also had to be made for Elinsco, Thefia, and L'Oncle, since Queen Silenda wanted to credit them for their hard work. On the second Wamnadi of Shivieramyi, 909, the girl was crowned Queen Silenda Miadelia Magria Arinia Gresha Quinia Anieria the 15th, the Queen of Quinia. She was dressed in purple for her royalty, and gray for her status as the Gregicica. Her dress was long and full, made of fine velvet and lace, and elaborately embroidered with silver hexagons and the moon in various phases. The bodice was fit closely to her figure, in the style that Cinera preferred, and while the sleeves started out similarly, they became loose at her elbows. After she was crowned, she went to Linziso's great balcony to address the crowds, along with Elinsco, L'Oncle, and Thefia, who were also dressed in fine clothes, though they looked uncomfortable in them. Elinsco, as the Arexacico, was dressed in orange, embroidered with hexagons on his collar and around the cuffs of his sleeves, a finer version of the clothes he had gotten from his predecessors all the way back when the war with the Soledi began, back when he had only just been finding out what he was, and had two hands. It felt like that had been centuries ago, not a little less than a year. He carried a zanyelosa at his hip. L'Oncle was wearing green in the Beredan style, his shirt heavily embroidered in the patterns his province enjoyed, much like what he had been wearing on that day when Queen Silenda came to ask him to solve yet another of her mother and godmother's disputes, when his biggest problems were Zebocron and those disputes, not the fate of the kingdom, though more fine and Beredan rather than Cineran style. Thefia was wearing a dress of shimmering light blue silk, in a style that looked more Rosinin or Soledo, and an embroidered wimple trimmed with lace. Her skirt was long and full, like the Queen's, but the sleeves were long and bell-like, and the bodice was not as closely fitted to her figure, though a blue ribbon was tied at her waist. The eye of the Soledi was the common theme of her clothes embroidery. "People of Quinia," Queen Silenda said, surprising herself with how loud her voice was. "I am Queen Silenda Miadelia Magria Arinia Gresha Quinia Anieria the 15th, daughter of Queen Silenda Josadelia Quinia the 14th, and King Ridero King the 2nd, who were killed by King Garendo the Terrible, a name so dreaded most dare not speak it, granddaughter of Queen Silenda Quinia the 13th, the great restorer, goddaughter of Lady Soledo, the Lady Soledo. She did not much like saying Garendo's name either, and had to fight not to wince. I speak to you now only after a great ordeal. The last king of the Jarisse returned on the 2nd Agradi of Hewapnelomyi, seemingly from death. On the 1st Agradi of Duomyi, he stole the throne of Quinia, one that rightfully belonged to my mother. He later found my parents, and on the 3rd Shemachludi, killed them. She had to fight to keep her voice steady when she talked about her parents. Now, with the help of the Soledi and the Jarisse, as well as soldiers who remained loyal to their queen, I have taken back what is mine. I am the Gregicica. I am the descendant of Queen Silenda the 1st and King Elinsco the 1st, the founders of our great country. I am the Queen of Quinia. The crowd cheered her name, though Queen Silenda noticed something. They were calling her Queen Silenda the Short. Queen Silenda almost screamed. Of all the things they could title me, why that? She muttered. She did not know how, but she just knew that Prince Gero had something to do with this. She could almost imagine the look on his face. Elinsco was giving her a sympathetic look. The fille and Longue-Sœur almost laughed, more from surprise than anything. But, of course, I did not get here alone, Queen Silenda continued once the noise had died down. It was my godmother, Lady Quinia, who sheltered me. It was her niece and heir, Lady Sonjeta, who helped gather our forces and poisoned the enemy. It was Lady Deria, who led the Jarisse in our rising. It was Menyo of Kirovino, of the newly found Seroda tribe, who revolted against his cruel master and killed the Lord Rosenna, Lord Gageloso Gago, though it is tragic that one so young was pushed to that point. It was Lord Agriado Ashedelo of Old Sillery, son of Misadelo and husband of Lady Iveria. Villadelia Oronta of Old Sillery, daughter of Luchonsin, and Fieso Jonfao of Carvigno, son of Josebo, who killed Caresha of Carvigno, who called herself Gregicica, the leader of the Soledi who worked with the Jarissa King. Finally, it was Elinsco El Minho of Sillery, the grandson of Corrigno, the friend of Elinsco Bombir, and the latest of Sio's chosen, the Arexacico. Theofonsia Caresha of Sillery, daughter of the Soledo Ferron, and Elinsco Luchon of Bori, grandson of Menyo Lincier, another of Elinsco Bombir's friends, who defeated the Jarissa King. When he returned, Elinsco did not hesitate to fulfill his duty and fight him, but tragically lost his hand. Thankfully, before he could be killed, Theofonsia and Elinsco rescued him, and he was later able to defeat the usurper. If not for these three, I would not be standing in front of you now. Longue-Sœur winced when she called him the grandson of Mienzisno. The crowd cheered again. Their titles were equally unflattering. The common one for Elinsco seemed to be Elinsco Cor ont Montand, which meant Elinsco with one hand. For Longue-Sœur, it was all either Elinsco Lincier, Elinsco Lincier, or titles involving words for beratings that will not be repeated. Ethefia was also being called very rude words, though, in addition, she was also being called Velaferis, daughter of Ferron. I am going to behead the next person who calls me the Short, Queen Silenda said. Longue-Sœur smiled a little. You've been queen for about 5 minutes. Let's save the tyranny for later. She sighed. I suppose. Queen Silenda, there are worse things than people calling you short, Ethefia said. You're right, Elinsco said. Like the thing people are going to remember about you being how you lost a hand. Ain't as bad as what they're calling Tevzija on me, Longue-Sœur said. Ethefia blinked. Wait, other than that, I'm fine with being called the daughter of Ferron. I'm the only one happy with any of my titles. Once the noise died down, Queen Silenda addressed the crowd again. Let us pray for a long and peaceful reign. Saints de Chironfo and Iveria, the martyred king and queen, pray for us.